Hey, what's up? I'm Guy, and that's John.
Yes, it is. We have a YouTube channel. You're on it. Subscribe to the page, like the video, maybe even leave a comment. Also, below in the description, we have this little thing called the podcast. Need you to subscribe to that as well.
Video brought to you by DraftKings. Promo code HAM. Your shot at $1 million, getting our Masters game if there's still room. Haberman Middlecoff League, and brought to you by American Giant. Go get the gear.
Get on it.
15% off. Sam Darnold is now squarely in this draft class. It's his second draft class, John, that Sam Darnold's in since he got traded to the Panthers. What happens with him over the next 2-3 years? What happens with the Niners pick and the player that they draft? These things are now connected because we know what the cost on Sam Darnold was. I saw some people saying it was a lot, some people saying it was not a lot. To me, I don't think it's a ton, second-round pick. Now, it's more if they're bad, it's less if they're good, plus a couple of other picks. But the second-round pick is really the one that stands out. So now everything the Niners do, whoever they draft, that guy will also be compared to Sam Darnold because we spent so much time talking about if Sam Darnold should be the guy. Because guess what? If they did what the Panthers did, they would still have the 12th pick. So this is now part of the Niners story, even though he's not on the Niners.
Yeah, I think from a Panthers perspective, it's a pretty low-risk, high-ceiling swing. You know, I mean, he's terrible. You didn't really give up that much. It's more than, you give him a 2-year tryout.
Nobody loses their job if this one fails.
No, I think there are some parallels, like I said earlier, with Joe Brady and what he did with Joe Burrow to Sam's game. They do just have some players that are good. I mean, Christian McCaffrey, when healthy, is a star, right? I mean, an absolute star. Now at pick 8, why couldn't they take, if Sewell were to fall to them or Slater, like a sweet offensive lineman? They have DJ Moore. Like, they have weapons. Robbie Anderson, who played well with Sam. All of a sudden, you got like 3 or 4 offensive pieces to go with your star offensive lineman. It's like, okay, can their offense now just be really explosive? When you look at the history of the league, most guys that start like him rarely ever become really good players. Like, he is fighting at this point in time an uphill battle, right? His resume through 3 years and watch them this year were pretty questionable. I think it would be easy to defend.
He made that one throw down 30 against the Niners, but show me, can we get some other throws in the highlight reel, please?
I watched some because I wanted to see what the GM. I was like, I bet if I went to the Panthers Twitter account, they have like a press conference, and their GM Fitterer is his name. He was a lifetime he was basically the Adam Peters for Snyder for like a decade, and just hearing his quotes about Sam, he's like, of course, I really liked him. Obviously coming out, we felt comfortable getting him with Joe Brady. The price point wasn't that crazy. We just like him. Right? It doesn't change. We're not going to draft a quarterback at 8. I think they were just saying that. But here's the thing, Guy. If he was 26, 27, fair or not, I think he would be viewed way differently. His age and his situation, it has some like NBA parallels. You go, God, that place was that place was a disaster. Mm-hmm. And you wouldn't say like, well, the Jets, Joe Douglas was around in the last couple of years and he's just kicking the curb on them. They do have the number 2 overall pick. I would say if they had done this and they had the 10th pick, it would be like, God, they think he sucks, right? Yeah, they do. They have the 2nd pick in a loaded quarterback draft.
Now, we have to take all this with a grain of salt. And I think Joe Douglas, who you always told me before he got the job, was an impressive guy.
People like
watching him, he seems impressive. There's no reason to say anything other than what he said, and I'm about to tell you what he said. But he did say it, so I'll repeat it here. Basically said, if we were any lower in the draft, we wouldn't have done this. Like, we liked Sam. This was all part of the context of like we're taking Zach Wilson. This is some of what he said Tuesday. He didn't say that, but people are reaching that conclusion based on they absolutely have their guy targeted at 2. How could they not? They know who's going 1. But again, passing along what he said, if we were not drafting well, we were drafting, safe to say we'd still have Sam. In other words, we're only doing this if we're reading between the lines because I think Zach Wilson is a star.
Do you feel this normally happens every year, or are we just so deep in this with the Niner trade, or is this a pretty special kind of like some storylines going on right now?
I think the last few years, the Kyler, Josh Rosen thing, I would put in this category. As it turns out, Tua and whether they were to replace him, I don't know. We won't ever know how real that was, but because it didn't really come from them. It really started with the Deshaun stuff. and the fact that Tua didn't look great. But yeah, I think this is pretty rare the last few years that we've had some of these young quarterbacks moving off young quarterbacks for young quarterbacks. Highly drafted.
Well, Wentz got traded this offseason. Sam Darnold moved team.
Yeah.
Matt Stafford went to the Rams. Watson was going to get traded before his disaster. Russell Wilson threw his name in the hat. Aaron won't shut up about it's not up to me. It's like, whoa. There's just a lot of it's quarterbacks. I think it always happens probably with position players. Like, okay, Stephon Diggs been wanting to get out of there for 2 years. That happens all the time. Now the quarterbacks, and it's not some of them like Sam Darnold wasn't asking to leave. He just got traded, right? So it's just Jimmy Garoppolo might get dealt here soon. It's just a unique time. I've seen people talk about this, that it's the Mahomes effect. And everyone, like, you just stand pat back in the day. You're like, I just play with my, kind of average guy. And now it's like, well, if we're going to compete, and really the guys who win Super Bowls are Tom Brady or Mahomes. Like, if you want to win, you basically, the only guy that can compete is like Aaron Rodgers. So it's like, I'm not just going to roll with some average guy for 5 years. That sucks. And unless you're the Niners and trade, all these picks, you don't have a choice. But I think all these teams, when I was in the NFL, you basically rotated every position. Beside like Dornbos was the one guy who kind of got treated like a quarterback.
Snapper.
Yeah, you didn't want to deal with it, and so we just left. But every other guy, you're constantly like, is this guy better? Is this guy better? Is this guy better? You do it at every position. It's wide receiver. It's easier. It's like, well, we got 3-star wide receivers, but we could easily add a fourth, right? Or this guy could play guard too. We got 2 tackles. You're just always trying to bring in quarterbacks. Like, no, we're good. It does feel like just keep swinging, keep churning. And you see this with this move with the Jets. They're like, we just don't think Sam Darnold's his seat. Like, we might think he's okay and he could probably be better under this new, but let's take a shot at a guy from scratch with a higher upside. And it's just, I don't know if that move 15, 20 years ago, I feel like Sam Darnold would have stayed on the Jets and you would have traded that pick and accumulated a much more and just tried to build around a 23-year-old dude from USC, which I don't think anyone probably would have had pushed back much on. But I get it. And I said that would have been the conservative move 15, 20, 30 years ago. Now, just because it played out a little longer, we're like, God, are they going to keep him? No, they weren't. I mean, they were never going to keep him. They were just waiting probably. Maybe they just couldn't get a second-round pick, and they finally got someone to pull the trigger in a second. They're like, let's just get rid of him. They were always going to take Zach Wilson. Yeah. And I think that's where the league is really changed.
They were going to take Trevor Lawrence at number 1, and then they lost that pick.
But I think Kyle factors into this as well.
Maybe they would have taken Zach Wilson. I don't know.
He could have easily justified bringing back Jimmy Garoppolo, paying Andy Dalton or someone $5 million, but no problem. But that's now the result. We can dictate whether that's good or bad when he finally picks. But the mindset behind it all was right.
Yeah.
And I think the whole league's kind of thinking like this.
Yeah, I mean, if you were going to be conservative and you were the Jets, you would say, look, if we stick with Sam, that buys us like another 2 years because you start your clock the second you pick a quarterback, number 2 overall. Like, the pressure is on you, even if you're new, even if you got a 6-year contract. Like, you are planting your flag. Now, this is why I go back to not doing a deal is also planting your flag. Not making a decision is also making a decision. Not trading Sam Darnold is taking Sam Darnold over these other guys. So that's a decision too. Like, that's the other part of it is the careers in the NFL are longer, I guess. 10 years are longer than NBA 10 years, baseball 10 years, but they're still not that long. Like, you can't afford to be in a position where you take Sam Darnold over all these other guys.
You're saying as a coach or as a player?
I'm saying as a coach or a GM. Yeah.
You're saying you might get to last a little longer?
You do last longer in the NFL than you do in the NBA or than you do in Major League Baseball, but you still can't operate like, I got 6 years, we got time. I think not trading Sam Darnold and keeping him is choosing Sam Darnold. Yeah, right? That's not like that. We could call that staying pat and being conservative, but you are choosing Sam Darnold over all these other guys, and that is also making a decision. So I think from a Panthers standpoint, like, Sam's going to play with the most talented guy he's ever played with in McCaffrey. Like, McCaffrey's better than Juju.
Oh, you're saying, yeah, 100%.
This is the best player he's ever played with.
Yeah.
So I
he's one of the shot. And when healthy, he's one of the best players in the NFL.
I give him a shot here, but I give him a better shot here than if they traded him somewhere else. Like, they also now maybe there weren't that many places to send him, but trading him there is a chance he's going to look good. You got to be okay with that.
Yeah. I think the bar's low. The team sucked last year. It's actually kind of a nice little landing spot. Then, like, for him, who doesn't feel fragile. Like, I don't ever look at Sam and be like, mentally he can't handle it. And I've heard.
Other than the time he said seeing ghosts, but even that didn't feel fragile. It just felt
But remember,
like
a lot of quarterbacks said
yes.
I've never played quarterback, that was a kind of a normal thing to say when you're just confidence a little off.
He didn't seem like he was like, oh, I'm seeing ghosts.
Yeah, like I'm terrified. He meant like I'm seeing things that aren't actually there and I'm making bad reads. Didn't he throw like 5 picks in that game? It was really bad.
Was that fresh off of mono?
That's a good question. I feel like that was 2 years ago. Oh, yeah, that was mono was 2 years ago. Might have been before mono. Wasn't that on Monday Night Football?
Some breaks. Yeah.
So I'm rooting for him. If he had gone to a Washington football team who had just made the playoffs, if he had gone to the Saints where they were used to winning 12 games, there just would have been more pressure on him than this. I mean, this team was terrible last year. And some things I read yesterday, I don't follow the Panthers that closely, is like, they were bullish on Teddy. And then he started playing. And then the head coach, it's a much less financially like angry move than like Jared Goff. But like Jared Goff, Matt Rule was like, I can't fucking watch this anymore. It's like, yeah, guys, what do you think Teddy Bridgewater was? And I think they would say, listen, we overvalued him a little bit, but what were our options? And that is sometimes you get stuck in the Teddy Bridgewater, Andy Dalton, Mike Glennon, even Ryan Fitzpatrick is the highest end of that. You don't ever want to be in that position. If that's what you're shopping for, it's like kind of shopping in the frozen food pizza aisle when you're trying to be healthy. You're like kind of stuck. You're like, well, it's the healthiest frozen pizza. It's like, well, ideally you'd fucking go get some chicken, right? But you're just stuck. And that's, I think Washington football team was stuck because making the playoffs, their draft pick was back. The Bears were stuck. The Saints, somewhat because of their salary cap situation, were kind of in limbo and stuck. Also, they make the playoffs, so they got to trade way up. They go, well, look what Kyle had to spend from 12 to get up. I think a lot of teams would tell you that. Like, well, why didn't you get really aggressive to get a first-round quarterback? Well, do you see the going rate right now to get up? I mean, what were we supposed to trade? 7 first-rounders to come from 24?
Yeah.
And I'd be like, yeah, you're kind of right.
Well, one
thing I'll be fascinated by is on draft night, is there a trade up and the price? Because they admitted that we paid a premium to go up early, and you never know this, and this is fair. Like, we didn't want to deal with the unknown, and I'm cool with that mindset. I'm okay with paying a lot up front just to sleep well at night. But what if someone comes up from like 20 to get a single digit and like they gave up less than Kyle did? Yeah. That'll be kind of crazy.
Yeah, yeah.
Like it's like, they came up, they just have to give next year's 1 and 2.
What? If they overestimated, right? Or if 3 quarterbacks go in the top 3 and then the 4th guy doesn't go until 9 or 10.
What if Belichick gets like Justin Fields at 15?
Right.
Wait
a second. You guys thought all the quarterbacks were going to be gone before 12. Did you misread the room?
And Kyle's like, no, we thought Mac Jones was going to be gone before 12.
Okay. Part of this, again, we know the price that was paid for Sam Darnold. We know the price that was paid for the 3rd quarterback in the draft. We don't know who that player is yet, but how Sam plays and the price that was paid for him is all part of the evaluation over the next 2, 3, 4 years on how we judge what Kyle Shanahan does at number 3. That's all part of it. Because it didn't take a first-round pick to get Sam Darnold. Not this time around.
Technically didn't. The first time they just swapped picks and took 3
true.
2s. Sam Darnold's been pretty good now. 3 2s for a guy that wasn't that good that you ultimately traded. Not ideal value. But I'm just saying,
devastating.
Him in a vacuum, he's pretty cheap.
Not devastating. Yeah. Yeah. So you trade a 4, a 6, and a 2. Okay. The Panthers feel
Unless
great
he
about
stays
that.
sucking, and then it's all a waste.
Yeah, but the Panthers a 4, a 6, and a 2. How do you arrive at that combination of things? Like, we want a 4, a 6, and a 2. Say what?
I think one thing, my guess would be they were adamant, we are not getting minimum. We need to get a second back. And it's like, well, we're not giving you any picks this year, right? You're getting nothing of value.
I thought the 4th was this year. Or the 6th.
I thought it was the 6th. The 6 is this year. They get a 2nd and a 4 next year. But I think the way they view it is if we're better, those picks are not as good.
Sure.
But if you're shitty, which is possible, if they're like a 5-win team, that's a pretty good pick for the Jets early in the 2nd round because they got all these ones. Like they got a lot of picks.
Yeah.
But eventually they're at the point now where it's like, okay, you got all these picks. Like you got to start picking.
Well, if Zach Wilson's good, no matter where that 2nd is, it's going to feel like a great pick.
100%.